For the last 30 days, I only played Game Boy games. Why? Well, the honest answer is I saw someone else do it and I thought it sounded fun. So I decided to make a video documenting my own experience and the games that I played. The act of limiting myself to only playing games on one console has always been something that I've wanted to try. And after seeing Forge Lab's Game Boy video, I've decided to make one myself. I thought about calling this video a challenge or an experiment, but it isn't really either of those. It's not like I'm testing to see if I would go insane after only playing Game Boy games for a month. I mean, I grew up with this thing after all, and I'm not the type of person who only plays modern games. In fact, I feel like I spend more time playing retro games than I do modern games sometimes. So for me, the purpose of this video will be more to test my ability to focus on one thing for a while. These days, I often find myself struggling to give one thing my full attention. Whether it's a long-running show I'm trying to catch up on, a game, manga, podcast, music, or even simply giving my attention to another human being. But seriously, I can't even begin to count how many pieces of media I've started and never finished. Finding that balance in life can just be difficult. So when I saw this video by Forge Labs, I immediately felt the urge to try this myself, to see if limiting myself to one console could help me improve my ability to focus on things. And what a perfect console to try this with. The Game Boy is a portable console that can easily fit in your pocket, and its library of games are known for their simplicity and short length. At the time of writing this part of the script, I haven't actually started my month of Game Boy yet. I think it'll be more interesting to document everything as I go. I'll be playing my games on this atomic purple Game Boy Color that I've had for as long as I can remember. But for the sake of good video footage, I'll be playing these games on the Retron 5, so don't worry, I won't make you stare at my monkey hands for this entire video. The first game I decided to tackle was Super Mario Land. I had a lot of fun with this game, but it isn't without its flaws. For starters, it is by far the shortest Mario game ever, with only 4 worlds, each containing 3 levels. The game only took me around an hour and a half to beat, and I streamed myself playing it on Twitch so that friends could see me have a mental breakdown from the comfort of their own homes. Okay, no one's watching this stream right now, so I'm just gonna... Don't tell anyone, okay? Gonna make a safe state. Shh. It's fine. I need footage for the video. You don't understand. I need... Shit. For a second I thought that killed me. I was about to be... What happened? You know... I thought, like... You know, I'd say I play games a lot, right? But, like, I'm really bad at them. Where am I supposed to go? There's supposed to be a block right here, but it's not. It's not showing up. Help. It's really hard to change direction in mid-air, so be prepared to commit to your jumps. Also, when you step off a ledge, it feels like gravity just pulls Mario down way harder than it usually does, and you can't really move when this happens. But it's not that big of a deal once you get used to it. I mean, this was the first Mario game developed for a handheld, and with that in mind, I think it does a decent job of adapting the series to a completely new platform. One thing that I love about this game is how it's set in a completely different kingdom. Gone are the standard enemies and level themes commonly used in most 2D Mario games. Mario Land features level themes seemingly based on real-world locations. It almost makes me wonder if Mario Odyssey took some inspiration from this game. I found the boss fights in Mario Land to be really easy. 2 of them you can just jump over as soon as you see them, and the other 2 are at the end of these shooter levels where Mario just hops into a plane and the game temporarily isn't a platformer anymore. I like these levels a lot though, and I wish it was something that we would see more often in other 2D Mario games. I did find it kind of weird that the last level in the game was one of these shooter levels. You would expect it to be a platforming gauntlet that tests everything you've learned so far, but it's not. Even the final boss is like something out of a simplified Gradius game. Gradius? However you say it. I'm not complaining though, I am all for games playing with your expectations like that. The music is super memorable, and it's honestly what kept me going through some of the game's tougher levels. It's a real shame that none of these songs have ever been in another Mario game, at least as far as I know they haven't been. Next, I decided to take a break from platforming and play through the first generation of Pokemon. Usually when I want to play a Gen 1 Pokemon game, I go with the yellow version because of its improved sprites, full color support, and being able to have all of the starters on my team. However, I wanted my playthrough of Gen 1 to feel different this time, so I went with red. I actually started playing this game around 6 months ago because I wanted to make a video about, well, the first generation of Pokemon, but that never happened. So thanks to my still functioning save battery, I was able to pick up right where I left off. Pokemon list. Looks like whoever owned this before me drew in this with marker. I can't even tell what any of this is supposed to be. I don't know if they tried to draw a Butterfree right here. Looks like a piece of broccoli to me. What is this supposed to be? You just fill in the Pokedex yourself? They said we have Breedrill and Pidgeotto. Yes, my favorite Pokemon. One of my favorite parts of the Gen 1 Pokemon games is all of the crazy glitches you can do. During one of my recording sessions, I decided to mess around with the long-distance trainer glitch, a trick that I had been doing off-camera a lot in earlier areas of the game in order to find some rare Pokemon. I got so excited to show off this glitch for the video that I plugged my mic in and tried my best to explain what I was doing, but in the end, I just kind of fumbled around like a dummy most of the time. So step out. Yeah, so here, this like scared me, so this message pops up. Can't you see I'm hiding? And I was like, wait a second, I thought like I triggered a cutscene or something, but like I said, in some areas it brings up your pause menu, but here it brings up this message. You press the A button, and then you start an encounter in the elevator. And oh my god, a Missigno. Wow, okay. I actually have never had it be a Missigno. I did this with a different Team Rocket member, and it was a pincer. I'll show you in my box, but I'm gonna catch the Missigno. I made a save state, so if this messes up my game, I can always just reload that save state. But let's catch a Missigno here. I don't know, should I use wrap on it? I've never encountered a Missigno in my life, so I'm curious to see what this does. Item, I think I have Great Balls there. Oh my god, of course. Well, the box is full. But overall, I had a lot of fun with this playthrough of Gen 1. It was really cool going back to where this series all began after just recently finishing Pokemon Sword. I know that for many, the Gen 1 Pokemon games are pretty tough to go back to, especially since nowadays fans can visit the Kanto region through the GBA remakes and even the Let's Go games on the Switch. But even though these games are a little rough around the edges in some ways, they are still worth going back to if you are interested in the humble beginnings that spawned one of the biggest video game franchises in history. Or if you just finished the beginner-friendly Gen 8 and want to experience a slightly more challenging Pokemon game again, give the Game Boy games a try. I have to put emphasis on the slightly though, because if you know what you're doing, these games can be a breeze. Just look at how my fairly underleveled Alakazam and Lapras one-shot more than half of the Elite Four's Pokemon. After the long hours spent in Pokemon Red, I decided to check out some more pick-up-and-play kind of games as a sort of palate cleanser. I went on a small puzzle game binge, the first one being Dr. Mario. The Game Boy version of Dr. Mario came out in 1990, the same year as the NES version, and it shows because the games are pretty much the exact same, aside from the slightly different UI and obvious lack of color in the Game Boy version. You might expect a puzzle game about matching colors to be impossible to play on the original Game Boy, and well, you're not entirely wrong. To adapt to the Game Boy's limited display, the viruses and pills are now black, white, and checkered. It's pretty clear to see which pills you're working with, but I did encounter several instances where I couldn't tell the difference between the checkered and black viruses at first glance. Dr. Mario is a great game to play in short bursts on the go. I'm sure that back in 1990, many people spent more time playing the Game Boy version than the NES release because it was the only portable option for this game. However, nowadays, there are much better ways to play Dr. Mario on the go. So, as you can imagine, I gave up on this one pretty quickly. Next up was this often forgotten game simply called Yoshi. I remember seeing this one in stores as a kid and wanting it because I thought it was a platformer like Yoshi's Island, but on the Game Boy. You can probably imagine my immediate disappointment once young me finally got his hands on it, only to find a mediocre puzzle game. Despite the name, Yoshi actually has you controlling Mario, flipping stacks of classic Mario enemies around. You match two enemies to clear them, or you can sandwich a bunch of them between a bottom and top eggshell to hatch a Yoshi. And that's really all there is to it. If I had to say one good thing about it, I'd say I like the art on the label. It's pretty cute. This game couldn't hold my attention for more than 10 seconds as a kid, so I'm proud to say that I played it for around 5 minutes this time. I'm just gonna put this one over here. Now, if you're looking for a good puzzle game starring Yoshi, then look no further than Yoshi's Cookie. After booting this game up for the first time in years, I was immediately charmed by this adorable opening cutscene. Yoshi's Cookie at first glance looks like just another early 90s puzzle game, but this one is packed full of personality and the gameplay is pretty fun too. It's one of those matching puzzle games similar to Bejeweled or Candy Crush, but instead of moving one piece at a time, you're moving an entire row of cookies. If you've ever played that one barrel minigame from Mario & Luigi's Superstar Saga, it feels really similar to that. And if you know what I'm talking about, you're officially invited to be my new internet friend. This is probably my favorite puzzle game on the Game Boy for when I've had enough of Tetris. The difficulty curve is smooth, the music is memorable, and albeit simple, the little animations given to Mario and Yoshi that represent your inputs, along with the cutscenes every 10 levels, really give this game an extra layer of charm. I'd say that if you're in the mood for a puzzle game on the Game Boy that isn't Tetris, definitely get yourself a copy of Yoshi's Cookie. It wasn't long before I was feeling a little bit burnt out on the puzzle games, so I decided to go with another platformer. This time I tried out Donkey Kong Land, a game that I've owned for a long time but never really got into, and after playing the first handful of levels, I remembered why. My problem with Donkey Kong Land isn't that it's just an 8-bit version of Donkey Kong Country, because really it's not. The developers really tried to mix things up by using enemies and level themes from the first two Donkey Kong Country games, and eventually all new environments if you can even make it that far. And I commend them for reworking such complex graphics to run on such limited hardware. But that's kind of the main issue with this game. It is so hard to see where you're going. Even when playing this one on the Retron 5 blown up on a big screen, enemies and objects were still blending in with the background. This, combined with the reduced visual field on the Game Boy's small screen, will lead to dozens of cheap deaths that don't feel like they're your fault. They feel like, they're the game's fault. I ultimately ended up putting this game down far before reaching the end, but for what it's worth, I at least recommend listening to the game's amazing soundtrack. One thing I want to say, though, is playing this with the Game Boy Color palette is actually a lot easier because, as you'll see in the footage from the Retron 5, it was using the Super Game Boy Color palette, which has the characters and enemies and any interactable objects. They're all the same color. But on this, usually I prefer Super Game Boy Color palettes because usually they add more color. But in the case of Donkey Kong Land, you're better off playing it with the Game Boy Color palette, as I'm seeing now, because you can actually differentiate things you can interact with from the background. So right there, for example, I would run into this barrel and be like, what just happened? Because I couldn't even see it when I was playing it on my big TV, because everything was the same color with the Super Game Boy Color palette. So if you want to play the Donkey Kong Land games, I would say don't use the Super Game Boy. That's a rare case where I would actually recommend not using a Super Game Boy Color palette. Since I'm a big baby who can't finish Donkey Kong Land, I decided to go with a platformer that was more my speed. Kirby's Dreamland is the very first Kirby game, and unlike Donkey Kong Land, this game feels like it was made for the Game Boy. Kirby's Dreamland is a very short game with only 5 levels, but I still had a good time playing through it. It was definitely weird playing through a Kirby game that didn't have copy abilities. This entry in the Kirby series instead uses a couple of power-ups on occasion, like the spicy curry and this seed thing that briefly turns the game into a shooter, kind of like Mario Land. This game really sets the bar high in terms of the level of pure cuteness present in the Kirby series today. I don't know how people could have played this back in 1992 and not fallen in love with it. I guess paying full price for a game that could have been beaten in 30 minutes or less may have upset some people, but besides the short length, I think this game holds up really well. There's even a bonus challenge mode if you hold a certain button combination on the title screen. I wasn't expecting much from it, but the challenge mode is actually pretty tough. After beating Kirby's Dreamland, I gained some confidence back and decided it was time to teach DK a lesson for making me suffer through Donkey Kong Land. So I picked up an old favorite of mine, Donkey Kong 94. This game is 100 levels of pure fun. I remember buying this at EB Games as a kid, thinking it was just the Donkey Kong arcade game, but on the Game Boy, and at first it is, but then you get to the last level and the game opens up into this amazing puzzle platformer. Each level is a small room, and your goal is to find a key and bring it to the door. The levels are really simple at first, but then as the game goes on, you'll be introduced to several new mechanics and level gimmicks by these little cutscenes that show you everything you need to know in a matter of seconds. Mario is so fun to control in this game, and his moveset feels oddly familiar to Mario 64. For example, if you quickly change direction and jump, you do a backflip. Maybe both of these games were in development around the same time. After all, Mario 64 only came out 2 years after this game. I definitely recommend checking this game out if you're in the mood for an action game with puzzle elements on the Game Boy. And it's surprisingly lengthy as well, taking most people roughly 6 hours to complete. And that's where my month of Game Boy ended. For now, at least. Due to the busyness of the holidays and other technical difficulties, I didn't get to play nearly as many games as I thought I would. But I don't really mind because I feel like I was really able to focus on the handful of games that I did play and talk about each of them a fair amount. And hey, isn't that the reason why I made this video in the first place? Overall, I'm really happy with the way this month of Game Boy thing turned out. Yeah, there were a lot more games that I would have liked to talk about, like Zelda, Pokemon Gen 2, and Dragon Quest. I really wanted to talk about Dragon Quest. Like, I had a full-on discussion about the art on the cartridge alone while I was gathering footage for this video. This is what they were adapting. Like, look at how much better that is. Look at Terry here, and look at him here. I mean, they might as well have put Jimmy Neutron on here. Same with Dragon Quest 1 and 2. You know what I see? This is Sheen, Carl, and there's Jimmy. That's Jimmy. That's the Jimmy Neutron crew, basically, right there. I mean, I don't know why you would... So, I might do something like this again in the future if people enjoy it. Be sure to follow me on Twitter if you want to see what I'm up to between videos. And if you're new to the channel, why not subscribe? What the heck, right? Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a demo for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX that I've been waiting to play for a couple weeks now. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.